Something interesting happened to me this week. I did something that people who build things often struggle to do. I slowed down. Not because I lost motivation, not because the vision changed. I slowed down because I had just come through a stretch of constant movement. For weeks, I've been building the Indie Author Bookstore, adding titles, organizing shelves, connecting with authors, answering messages, writing articles, learning the systems behind the website, making adjustments, fixing things, improving things, just moving. If you've ever built something from the ground up, you know that rhythm. There's always another task waiting, another idea to test, another improvement to make. Momentum pulls you forward, and eventually something inside you says, take a breath. So this week, I eased off the gas a little, and what happened next surprised me. Readers kept browsing. Books kept selling. Messages kept arriving. And right in the middle of this slower week, I crossed 10,000 followers on Facebook. That moment made me pause. Not because of the number itself, but because it revealed something about momentum that most people misunderstand. Sometimes the most interesting progress appears after the push. Welcome back to the Motivated Savages podcast. I'm Jody Savage, and this is the place where we talk about the real journey of building something meaningful in life. Not the overnight success story, the real path. And today, we're talking about something that almost nobody talks about. The quiet moment after the push. Anyone who has built something recognizes this phase immediately. It's the stretch where you're simply moving. You show up, you solve problems, you make adjustments, you improve what you built yesterday, and then you come back the next day and do it again. This phase can feel exciting. It can also feel exhausting. But the people who build things understand something important. Progress usually doesn't arrive in dramatic bursts. It grows through steady effort. That's the phase I've been in recently. Building the Indie Author Bookstore. Connecting with authors who want their stories discovered. Creating genre shelves so readers can explore new work. Writing articles to help books appear in search results. Organizing pages. Responding to messages. Adding books one at a time. When people see a finished platform, they often assume it appeared quickly. But the truth is, platforms grow piece by piece. One action, then another, then another. And over time, those actions begin to stack. The interesting thing about building something meaningful is that the outside world often doesn't see the early stages. People notice the finished result. They notice the follower count. They notice the numbers. But the numbers are rarely the beginning of the story. They're usually the result of many small steps that happen quietly over time. When I was adding books to the Indie Author Bookstore, nobody was applauding each new listing. When I was organizing genre shelves, nobody was counting the hours behind the scenes. When I was writing articles to help readers find books through search, it didn't feel like a milestone. It felt like work. But those small actions were doing something important. They were creating structure. They were building a foundation. And foundations create momentum. Eventually, though, something shifts. You step back for a moment, not because you quit, because you need space to see what has actually been created. And that's what happened this week. After weeks of constant building, I slowed down. Not completely, but enough to take a breath and look around. For people who are used to moving constantly, that moment can feel uncomfortable. We've been taught that progress only exists when we're actively pushing. We assume that if we slow down, everything will stall. But that assumption isn't always true. This week showed me that so clearly. While I slowed down, the platform kept moving. Readers kept browsing the bookstore. Books kept selling. New people kept discovering the site. Messages kept arriving. And then I noticed something else. The follower count crossed 10,000. 10,000 people following the page. That number didn't appear during a day when I was pushing harder than ever. It showed up during a moment when I stepped back. And that's when the realization hit. Momentum doesn't always require constant pushing. Sometimes momentum continues because of everything you already built. Many people believe momentum comes from intensity. They believe progress only happens when they're pushing as hard as possible every single day. But momentum doesn't work that way. Momentum is the result of accumulation. It forms when actions stack over time. Every post, every conversation, every improvement, every piece of work that moves the idea forward. Individually, those actions can seem small, but collectively, they begin to create movement. At a certain point, the work you did yesterday starts working for you today. The article you wrote continues bringing readers. The connections you made begin introducing your work to new people. The structure you built starts supporting new growth. Momentum becomes something that continues moving even when you step back briefly. This is why pauses are not the enemy of progress. They're part of it. When you step back for a moment, you gain perspective. You can see what has been created. You can see which parts of the path are working. You can notice growth that might have been invisible while you were focused on the next task. Pauses also allow something else important: integration. Your mind processes the work you've done. New ideas appear. Connections form. You begin to see the next direction more clearly. The pause is not a break from progress. It's part of how progress becomes visible. One reason many people quit too early is that momentum often forms slowly. They push for a while, they work hard, they try something new, then they look around and assume nothing is happening. So they stop. But the truth is, many meaningful projects move through a stage where progress is invisible. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Work compounds quietly before results become visible. Momentum often builds beneath the surface long before anyone notices, including the person doing the work. When I saw the number 10,000 on the follower count this week, I didn't see it as a finish line. I saw it as evidence. Evidence that consistent effort creates movement. Evidence that building something meaningful attracts people over time. Evidence that the path I'm walking is working. Not instantly, but steadily. 10,000 followers didn't appear because of one post. It didn't appear because of one moment. It appeared because of hundreds of small actions stacked together. And that realization changes how you think about your journey. When you're in the middle of building something, the future often feels uncertain. You're experimenting, trying things, learning what works and what doesn't. Sometimes it feels like you're just moving without knowing exactly where the path leads. But over time, something interesting happens. The path begins to reveal itself. Not all at once, gradually. Through the accumulation of actions. Through the connections you make. Through the people who discover what you're building. Through the small signals that tell you, keep going. And sometimes the clearest signal arrives during a pause. When you step back and realize the path has already started moving. So here's something I want you to think about this week. Consider something in your life that you've been building. It could be a project, it could be business, a creative pursuit, a new direction you're exploring. Now ask yourself one simple question. What if momentum is already forming? What if the actions you've taken are already creating movement beneath the surface? Instead of assuming nothing is happening, pause long enough to look at the progress that already exists. Then, take the next step forward. Not because everything is guaranteed, but because consistent effort has a way of creating momentum over time. I'm Jody Savage, and this is the Motivated Savages podcast. Live bold, ignite your path. That's the Savage way. If this message resonated, share it with someone who's been pushing hard and might need permission to pause for a moment. And if you want to carry this message with you, check out our merch line at motivatedsavages.com. We have designed gear to remind you to live bold every day. Together, we're building the Savage community, a movement of people choosing purpose, growth, and bold living.